Well, and of course, it is time for the bottom line tonight. This is the bottom line brought to you, of course, by Metro TV. My name is Kwasi Afie, coming your way live from our studios here at Rage in Accra. Tonight, the finance minister has spoken, and of course, we have a lineup of issues and activities and topics to be discussing. Did you listen to the finance minister early on? If you didn't, I'm going to play the video for you. It's just about 10 minutes, after which I'm going to be speaking to some economic experts and finance experts on what the way forward is for us as a country. We are told that if the pensioners and the people, the stakeholders do not sign on by tomorrow, we will get into a ditch. We had heard early on that by the end of March, we should be through with the progress made with the domestic debt exchange program, which is leading up to the IMF program. So the IMF program in its entirety should be concluded by March. And some have predicted that if by March we haven't gone through it, the economy will come to a halt. We want to listen to the finance minister again. I'm sure you've seen it on some news portals, but you've seen bits and pieces of it. I'm playing the entire 10 minutes to you, after which I'll get to my guest tonight. So you want to stick and stay with us? This is the bottom line.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On Monday, 5th December 2022, government launched the Ghana Domestic Debt Exchange Program as part of a broader response to recent macroeconomic challenges. At that time, we indicated that the debt exchange program had been informed by the debt sustainability analysis, which revealed that Ghana's public debt had become unsustainable and that debt servicing accounted for more than half of total government revenues and almost 70% of tax revenues, while total public debt stock, including that of state-owned enterprises and statutory funds, exceeded 100% of our GDP. The essence of the debt exchange, we indicated, was to help restore our capacity to service our debt and meet other expenditure obligations. I must say that all these essential considerations have not changed. Indeed, they are even more pressing today. Prior to this launch in November 2022, I presented the broad contours of our economic and financial landscape and the necessary response measures as part of the 2023 budget statement and economic policy. Since then, three significant developments have occurred to pave our path to economic recovery. First, Parliament, after sustained engagements, judiciously passed the 2023 budget, paving the way for the implementation of key revenue enhancements and expenditure consolidating measures. Two, government over the past several months aggressively pursued revenue enhancement and expenditure rationalization measures towards facilitating macroeconomic stability. Three, the Ministry of Finance worked assiduously with all stakeholders to reach a staff-level agreement on the IMF program in record time. The Ministry of Finance and Bank of Ghana worked assiduously with all stakeholders to reach a staff-level agreement on the IMF program in record time. The IMF program is broadly aimed at assisting government to restore macroeconomic stability with a strong focus on protecting the most vulnerable in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, undergirding the budget and the SLA was the Domestic Debt Exchange Program. Our strategy has been to work diligently and with urgency to restore macroeconomic stability, including bringing down inflation and stabilizing the cedi. These are necessary measures to protect businesses and restore the purchasing power of Ghanaians within the shortest possible time. It was our expectation that collectively we would have concluded the Domestic Debt Exchange Program by end January, to anchor our effort to alleviate the debt burden in the most transparent, efficient, and sustainable manner. However, we admit that there were legitimate and critical concerns which needed deeper and broader consultations. The requisite effort to address them have resulted in improved terms and changes in the closing date, with a final deadline of tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 7 February 2023, is the final deadline for institutions and individuals to sign up to Ghana's domestic debt exchange program. As a listening government, we have engaged all stakeholders on a daily basis, sometimes even deep into the night. The governor and I and our teams are all thankful to the Ghana Association of Banks, the Ghana Insurance Association, the Ghana Securities Industry Association, the Individual Bondholders Forum, the Pensioners Bondholders Forum for their interests, insights, and goodwill. Today, I'm here to provide an update of where we are and to once again encourage the full support of all individuals and institutional bondholders. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in December 2022, we invited all holders of Ghana's bonds to volunteer to exchange their holdings for new bonds whose terms are compatible with our desired downward debt trajectory. This invitation was within the context that for Ghana to reach the required debt sustainability threshold of debt to GDP of 55%, it was important to review the interest rates and maturities of the existing bonds. Having listened to and acknowledged emerging concerns, we have recalibrated the framework of the DDEP with the following constituting the terms of the improved and enhanced offer. 1. All individual bondholders who are below the age of 59 years, Category A, are being offered instruments with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of 15 years and a 10% coupon rate. 2. All retirees, including those retiring in 2023, Category A, are being offered instruments with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of 15 years and a 15% coupon rate. All retirees, including those retiring in 2023, Category B, are being offered instruments with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of 15 years and a 15% coupon rate. The objective of this is to ensure that individuals, especially retirees who put their hard-earned savings in our domestic market, are not left in hardship as a result of the DDEP and yet contribute to the result.
Right, so you all come back from that. So you heard the finance minister making a number of statements, but primarily the focus is that prolonging the domestic debt exchange program will inure to a very bad situation in the country. I have Professor John Gatsi on the line, and I hope you can hear me, Prof. Good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us. Good evening to you, Prof. Hello, Prof. Can you hear me? So we actually had Professor John Gatsi on the line right before we came into the studio, and he's been live on Zoom. I'm sure he's also monitoring the speech we were playing for you. And if we get him back on the line, we'll put him on and be asking him questions about what the finance minister has spoken or said so far, the debt exchange program. And finance minister says non-participation to prolong efforts to resolve economic crisis. I've already explained to you what the president and some people or some economic experts have said, and all the information that are coming out from every quarter of the economy. Are we supposed to panic? Are we supposed to be hopeful? Are we supposed to be cautious of what's impending? And the speculation is that if by March we don't have the program, which is the IMF program running, the country will be heading for a ditch, economically or financially. And that's exactly what we are looking at tonight. The finance minister has addressed the entire populace of the country, everybody who is interested in the economy of the country, and that is what exactly we are looking at. We were going to be talking about the Gold for Oil program as well, and We have a lineup of guests to speak to that too. I'm sure if we get Prof, we'll be asking him a bit about that as well. So you want to stick and stay with us. There are a lot of issues to discuss. I'll take the opportunity to take a quick break, and when I am back from the break, I'm sure I'll have Prof on the line on Zoom, actually, live via Zoom. And right after that, I'll be talking to you about gold for oil. Stay with us. You're welcome back from the break. And so the good news we are having currently is that Christian Echu has been found, and this is reported by the Mirror UK, and we are going by that. We are staying by that he's been found and rushed to the hospital. Well, let's come back to business. I told you earlier on that I have Professor John Gatsi live on Zoom. I'm trying to find something on my phone, but let me get to Prof first, and I'll come back to the things I want to find, and of course also put it to him. Prof, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
I hope you're doing very well.
By the grace of God.
Right. So let me go straight to the point. A few hours or minutes ago, we heard the finance minister and speak about the domestic debt exchange program and the entire IMF program. Let me put a very lay question to you, that if you listened to it and what you make of it. So did you listen to it and what do you make of it?
Well, I think the situation has gotten to a tense moment, that there is pressure to meet some deadline, and that to translate into fulfilling some of the preconditions of the IMF program to kickstart serious discussion to have a program approved. And at the same time, there is a real experience of the feelings of the people. And so there's a clash of the feeling of the people against the wish of the finance minister. I believe that is what I can get from the press release or I mean the discussion that you have shown to us.
Finance minister says by tomorrow the deadline will elapse and they will not be able to extend it again. What effect is this going to have?
I think legally it has no effect, because we are talking about bond or debt, and we are talking about the finance minister signing agreement with bondholders that I will pay you at maturity your principal, and I will pay you periodic coupon payment. That is the agreement. And the finance minister keeps saying that this is a voluntary debt exchange program. So what it means is that if you don't sign on to it, nothing happens to you. So that is what it is.
Is that actually the case? I mean, what we've been reading, I have just put on the screen for you some pensioners who picketed at the finance ministry saying that we don't want to be part of the program. Finance minister has pleaded with them to be part of the program in a restructured, so it's been structured, had a first restructuring, and then restructured again so that they can pursue the program.
Well, as to whether they want to pursue the program, they want to be part of the program, it's a choice they have to make based on their interests. That is why they have made the investment. Whether the decision to join the debt exchange program will inure to their benefit or not. So that's what will determine whether they want to join. And it seems they are not satisfied. They want to join. That they want to join. And I think at this point, it is very difficult to look at the faces of these pensioners and insist that they have to be part of the burden sharing. And that sounds very difficult for me to appreciate. And it's very difficult, so to say. Very, very difficult to look at these pensioners, and you keep insisting that they have to be part of the debt exchange program. I also believe that it is likely that if all the institutions sign onto the debt exchange program, we may not get the 80%. And if the 80% is something that is sacrosanctly determined by the IMF for Ghana, then it means that all this effort will come to naught. So the finance minister is looking at that aspect and insisting that the individual bondholders and these pensioners should be part of the deal. And that is very, very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate.
I want to get back to a very basic question that, do you think the finance minister got it right from the beginning? We have spoken about, of course, we can go into the economics of it and so on and so forth, but primarily, there was supposed to have been precisely an effective consultation, effective stakeholder engagement for all of these institutions that were going to have their investments touched.
Well, it is right that you made that point. There must be effective engagement from the beginning. The finance minister failed to do that, but he recovered from his position that he was holding and did some engagement. So now what we are looking at is whether the outcome of the engagement is satisfactory to the stakeholders, is satisfactory to the parties. If it's not satisfactory, and mind you, it is voluntary debt exchange program. So if it is not satisfactory to them, they don't have to think about anything. They just will not participate in it. And if it is satisfactory to them, then they join. So yes, it is true that proper engagement was not done from the beginning, but some engagement was done subsequently. But we now have to assess the outcome of the subsequent engagement. And by the expression of the people, cloud in the red and co show that they are not satisfied. And I believe their exemption is what is at stake now.
Prof, from where you sit, let me put this to you. Are you hopeful about the program entirely? The IMF program, are we going to pull through it?
Well, apart from hearing that we are doing debt exchange program, and apart from hearing that there is a certain deadline, which I don't believe that there is any deadline, except that we ourselves want to get this deadline quickly so that we can get to IMF to come on board early. That's how I see it. But I do not think that IMF has given Ghana, if by 7th February, you don't bring this on the table, we will not engage you again. I don't think that is the situation. It is the imposition of the finance ministry himself. It's not the IMF imposition.
Why do you think so, Prof? Is it because of precedents maybe in other countries who have had the program of this sort, because he had it over a year or two, or even Ghana with the previous ones that we have had? Is it because there was no cap on it that you are believing that there is no cap on this one as well, or you perceive that the finance minister just wants to get this through and done with?
Of course, getting the program through as quickly as possible is good for the economy, is good for the politics of the finance minister. So it's not strange that he's setting a deadline. But I do not believe that these deadlines are flowing from the IMF. No. We have so many countries who have engaged the IMF at the staff level. It takes a year for them to go through. So it's because we want to fast track it, and nobody is forcing us to fast track it. So if you are fast tracking it, don't assume that that is the deadline that is imposed on you by the IMF. No, I don't think so. But that does not mean that we shouldn't have a deadline. We must move from one point to another. So a deadline is good. But the way we are using the deadline, the way we are using the deadline, the way we are using the deadline to blackmail people to sign onto the program is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. I was even saying the deadline should not be at the detriment of the very people you want to be stakeholders of the entire program.
I think the program is not just about economy recovery. The program is a key program to determine the fortune of the government also. So I think the finance minister is believing that if they engage the IMF and meet the conditionalities precedent to the main program, they will fast track it, and the engagement of the IMF will start cooling down the economy, and recovery will begin as early as possible, so that they can have something to campaign with. All that the finance minister wants is that to recover the economy and use the economy for campaign. So that is why all these things. So it doesn't matter who suffers. It doesn't matter whether your business collapses. It doesn't matter whether when you accept the term you can't buy your medicine. It doesn't matter about that. It's all about recover and use for campaign.
I'll come back to that same question, and I have my last two questions, but that will be my last question as to whether Ghana can actually bounce back with the IMF program, as you have posited that if we're able to bounce back, of course, it will be for the politics of the finance minister and for the politics of government and so on and so forth. I believe that it shouldn't be at the detriment of the layperson, of the Ghanaian who is trying to support the economy. But some people believe that if by March or by the middle or end of March, we have not been able to go through the program successfully, the economy will come to a halt. Besides inflation, 50.4% as we speak, besides the dollar, which is rising back again, Bank of Ghana is quoting S prices somewhere around between 8 and 9. The commercial banks are quoting theirs around 10 to 10.5. And then on the black market, you hit around 12 to 13. And fuel prices as well just went back up last week. Gold for oil, we haven't seen the real impact as we were anticipating. And so all of these put together, the macro, the micro, and so on and so forth, if we don't get the IMF program by March, the economy will come to a halt. I mean, let me learn from you. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a two-way affair. But strictly speaking, I do not believe that this economy will come to a halt if a deadline is not met tomorrow. We may start experiencing some disruptions in the economy, but that will not mean that the economy will crash. If that were to be the case, the finance minister would have been willing to cut a lot of expenditure which are still on the books in the budget. And the finance minister is not willing to do that. So if you tell me the economy will collapse if we don't meet a deadline tomorrow, I will not believe you. But if the finance minister were to engage in all that, expenditure cut activities broadly, Agenda 111, you don't keep Agenda 111 when you are in this trouble. If the finance minister were to have that, 50% of the project or 20% of the project will have to be undertaken between this period and that period. Then we believe. But if you have this structure of your budget, if you have this structure of your expenses, and you tell me that if people don't sign onto the program tomorrow, the economy will collapse, that is a blackmail.
I get it. I get it where you're coming from. But following from that, let me ask you my last question. I don't know if you've seen Professor Hankey's statements about the mismanagement of the economy by Mr. Oforiatta, or maybe the finance ministry, and by extent, the government. There are people who also believe that the economy going down is not largely, and I want to choose my words well, as a result of the exogenous factors that government puts out, but real mismanagement, endogenous factors, real mismanagement of the economy by the handlers of the economy. And so even the IMF program will not save the economy. what do you think about that?
Well, I think the IMF program is not meant to provide some kind of rosy path for the economy. The IMF is just coming to help us to do what we have failed to do to get to this point. And after that, IMF will leave. And you know, our history is that we go back to our old ways. So the IMF is just coming to help us to cool down the economy, put the economy on the path of prudence, put the economy on the path of real activities to be taking place, focusing on what we need to focus on, control the central bank from the misbehavior of excessively lending money to the central government to spur inflation, and to bring distortion into the economy. The central bank will be controlled by that. The finance ministry will also be controlled about some expenditures, and so that we'll be on track. That is what the IMF program is coming to give us. It's not going to develop this country as some want to quickly say the IMF program will do. So that is how it is, and that is the truth. Well, I do know that people have concern about even the level of inflation. People have concern about the level of corruption. People have concern about nepotism. People have concern about discrimination. People have concern about targeting people's business, etc. Those concerns are there as contributing factor to what we have done. People have concern as to whether or not the COVID monies were utilized well or not, and have surfaced in the auditor's report. So we actually don't need any other external person to tell us. So you mentioned somebody. Yes, his observations are true, but for now, even with the 54% inflation rate that we are dealing with, it's too much for the economy to bear. It's too much for household to bear. It's too. I mean, it has erosion into people's income and people's capital. They cannot do business as they want to do. That is a reality we are facing. I think we have not gotten to a point that we should back down on our institutions. Statistical Service is supposed to be generating inflation figures.
Right.
None of us have been able to sit down to use their formula, compute the inflation figures, and dispute whether or not the figures they are churning out is correct or not. So I do not have any basis to doubt the figures that the Statistical Service is providing, except that I have concern with what the Bank of Ghana call indicative exchange rate, and then try to match it against transactional exchange rate. I believe that going forward, we have to take a second look at that, because you have indicative rate, that is fine.
Right.
But you know that it is the transaction rate that we are using in the country. So I think that we still have to hold faith, not doubt the figure they churn out, unless we have reasons to believe so.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof. I'm sure after tomorrow we'll still come back to you when the deadline has actually elapsed and the fallout still come out, and moving into March as well, whatever comes up, we'll come back to you. Professor John Gatsi is the Dean of Business School at the University of Cape Coast, and we've had the privilege of speaking to him.